Rachel Edmondson Clark is a dynamic coach, speaker, and a facilitator dedicated to guiding individuals through meaningful transformation. With a robust background in personal development and leadership coaching, Rachel blends mindfulness, vulnerability, and practical strategies to empower clients in both their personal and professional lives. Very much known for her engaging speaking style and commitment to authenticity, Rachel helps people navigate challenges, foster resilience, and embrace a deeper connection with their true selves. Rachel's journey from working in her mother's hair salon via collapsing on the boardroom floor to today's mission-driven coaching practice is something I'm really keen to explore, and I'm very, very pleased you found the time to join us today. So thank you very much for that. I wonder if you were okay just to start with a little bit about your earlier life. So what were your most important formative experiences, and could you trace a path from the person you were then to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just say thank you so much for having me on the show. I love the podcast, and I love the space and the questions that you ask. I think it's fantastic. So thank you. I'm super excited to be here. And didn't you say this might even be your 100th show?
Indeed, yes. You should. I should have bought you a banner or something. Or so it should be going off. So absolutely.
Oh, so congratulations on that significant milestone. To answer your question, yes, and you mentioned it in the intro, and thank you so much. It's a very kind introduction you've given me there. I grew up working in my mum's hair and beauty salon. So from the age of 12 to 22, I worked there. I started sweeping the floors, making teas and coffees, and eventually progressed to standing on, those little like potty boxes that you have in the when you're potty training your kids, standing on one of those to shampoo people's hair behind the bowl because I wasn't quite tall enough. At 14, I decided I'd had enough of that and wanted to be trained in doing something else, and so my mum got me on the reception, and it was an incredibly busy salon. So I think we must have serviced around 300 clients a week, and I was there at the front of the house welcoming everybody in, and kind of being that conductor in a way, because you need to have your eye on everything that was happening right around the salon to make sure that the appointment book and clients were being seen to and things were flowing well. And I think the thing that I remember most, and that I really enjoyed, and what resonated with me from that time in my life, was the fact that I would very quickly have to read people. The moment they came through that it was a glass door, they came through that glass door, I would need to quickly read them to understand how best to approach and build rapport with them. And what I loved was how somebody could come in maybe flustered, maybe a little stressed, sometimes down, and by the time that we'd worked the magic on them through the salon, that they were leaving just feeling so much better. And you could just see that, and you could read that in their body language. And I think that's always been a thing for me. I'm also deaf in my right ear, and so I think I have to pay extra special attention to what I'm reading from people and their body language. So yes.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because when you think about a hairdresser, it's a very, very personal experience. You're sort of giving literally your crown and glory to somebody to do something wonderful with. And a lot of hairdressers, beauty therapists, whatever, there's almost a therapeutic element to it. So you're listening to these people share things that they probably wouldn't share with lots of other people. And you sort of, they look to you and think, okay, what am I supposed to say? But it's really interesting that you got that knowledge and ability to connect so early, really. And do you think that's something that guided you towards sort of coaching, personal development, and working with people?
Well, I suppose, in all honesty, the thing that the family business did for me when I was thinking about my choices for my career was just go, oh my gosh, I do not want to have my own business. That's what it made me think. I wanted to be as far away from that as I possibly could. And so I went to college and to university, and then there was one company that I really wanted to work for, and that was Mars. And so I started my career at Mars, and I absolutely loved my time there. But it wasn't until later on, probably a good 10 years later on, that I kind of realized that I had climbed this corporate ladder, kind of got to where I thought I really wanted to be. And actually, it wasn't as fulfilling or as meaningful as I had hoped or I had expected it to be. And that was when I took a very deep look at what were the things that really made me come alive and that I felt that I absolutely loved. And it was at that point that I then started to think about more around the coaching and the personal development and the leadership development side of things. Yeah. So initially, no, it did the opposite. It made me go, I don't want to do that.
Did you get to a point in the sort of corporate world where you started to feel burnt out, and then did it have physical and mental effects on you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I can remember the moment that it happened. I was in my glass-fronted office. I was preparing to go into the boardroom, and instead of walking out the office door, I found myself lying on the floor, staring up at the ceiling tiles, and I'd collapsed. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. And I didn't know it at the time, but I now know that I had had a form of panic attack. And it was my body's way of just going, enough. I had spent months, if not years, disrespecting my body, neglecting the most important relationship in my life, and feeling that the only answer was to just work more and more and harder. And just every time just thinking, if I can just get over this, if I can just get over this, if I can just get over this. No, it's a very, very serious lesson to learn. Come a long way since then, I think, but it was a very, and I didn't know then at that stage that I wanted to do something else. I mean, I was able to get myself up off the floor that day and get some help. Obviously, I'm here. And it's a great way to get out of the boardroom meeting that day, you know, get out the exec meeting. I spent the best part of 3 years, you know, just really exploring with excitement and possibility as to what could be for me. And it was almost a little bit, I describe it a bit like being stood at the edge of a misty lake and knowing that I could see like the first stepping stone, and knowing that there would be stepping stones across this lake, but not being able to see them or work out the journey, and trusting that, you know, you just got to take that first step. And as you take that first step, more and more of those stepping stones, the mist starts to clear from the lake, and you can start to see your path and your way. And I'm sure it's different for everyone. You know, for me, that took me about 3 years to, you know, kind of just I would describe it like just, you know, following a magical thread, and, you know, just kind of pulling it and seeing, you know, where is this going to lead, but trusting that it would.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of people listening have a feeling that they're not necessarily doing the right thing, that they're doing something that they thought they should be doing, done it for a while, like say you've got to a senior position and have progressed up the ladder as supposed to be, but it's not something that they enjoy or something that gives them fulfillment. But on the other hand, they sort of think, but I'm not sure what else I should be doing. So when you explored, was it looking at the things you were good at and enjoyed? Was it looking at the outcome you wanted to deliver, or was it something else? How did you know that coaching, as opposed to being a dance instructor or a yoga teacher, or how did you know that coaching and speaking and facilitating was your path?
I think what I would, so just if anyone is listening and they're feeling like that, I'll share a couple of things that I trust will be helpful. The first was that I had to listen to the whisper. It was like a whisper on my heart. It'd been there a really long time. I think I'd been playing that down. And again, I can remember the very day I was in the shower getting ready for work. And I turned to that whisper and I was like, what are you saying? What are you saying to me? And it didn't have a clear answer, but it was along the lines of, you're here to make a positive difference. You're made for more. And as I came out of the shower that morning and my feet hit the bath mat, I made a decision. And that was that I didn't want a job or a career, but I wanted a life's mission. And I wanted something that I could know that I would get up and, feel alive every single day that I was doing the work that I was doing. No idea how I would find that, but committed to embarking on that journey. So then kind of enters the, okay, so what next? And I would say that the first thing that I did was I was just open. I was just open to what would maybe be something that I could love and that I could do. And I watched a number of documentaries, actually. The two that really stood out for me, one was Finding Joe. I'm not sure if that's one you've seen. Yeah. The other one was one called Choice Point. Both are available, I think, so people would be able to watch those on YouTube. I think the full lengths are available on those. And I remember watching those and reading. And then things just started to come to me. And one of the opportunities that kept coming into my field of vision was to study health coaching. And so I signed up. Okay, I'm going to do this thing. And it wasn't because I wanted to be a health coach, but I wanted to learn more about my own body and my own health, of where I'd been, of how I could make things better. And the course was set such that we learned over 300 different dietary theories in the sort of the first half of the year. And the second half of the year was more focused, whilst we still focused on the health side of things, but it was more focused on coaching and then building a coaching business. And again, I was doing the program and I changed through doing that program. So people at work started to notice a difference in me. I was lighter, physically lighter, brighter. They saw me have all this energy from being this, burnt out shell of myself. I was all of a sudden this, really, vibrant. And so people are asking, what are you doing? And just to the point that people were asking me, what am I doing? Was the time that the course said, now, if people start asking you, we want you to book in a consultation, if you invite them to have a consultation. And I remember being so hesitant. I remember being really like, what? I don't want to do the coaching thing. Like, what is this? And I was like, okay, but I'm following the course. I'm doing the course. I'm going to follow the course. I'm going to, trust. It's taking those steps, trusting. And so I ended up fully booked on a part-time basis with health coaching clients, working outside my normal full-time job. It was pre-children, of course, but and that's how I started into it. And it was through that I realized supporting and helping others and doing that was something that I absolutely loved. So that's where the journey, and I'd been doing it with the team for a long time anyway, kind of coaching my own team and my team members, but to apply it in a way that was much more holistic, not just work focused, I loved.
And when a new client comes to you now, do they tend to have similar asks? Is there a common theme running through what people want? What do you think people expect when they have their first session with you?
So I'm not a health coach per se, albeit that is part of my training and my background. So I work with senior leaders and their teams um, currently, and that's what I absolutely love to do. And the way that I work would be that we would have a, we would have we'd have a conversation first and foremost. I think
Mhm.
whenever you are coaching with anybody, it's a really important relationship, and the chemistry for that relationship is very important. So one, when I'm meeting with somebody, I'm wanting to understand, am I the right person to help them? Because I might not be. And if I'm not, then I want to be able to help connect them to somebody who might be the right person. And are we a good chemistry fit for one another? Because when I do work with clients one-on-one, it's a really it's a really intimate service, because I will not just work with my clients on sessions, whether that's, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever the cadence is. I will work with my clients, and they will have access to me in between those sessions as well. So there will be regular contact, and it's a case of really understanding what is the change that they're wanting to get to, what's the destination, where are we headed to, am I the right person to help them, and then are we a good fit, because we're going to be working together closely.
Mm.
So energetically that has to work, and that's really important. And I would, anybody that is considering, I'm sure you would say the same, that anyone that is considering coaching, I think having a conversation with 2 or 3 coaches and just really getting that sense of how different people work, because we do all work differently, and I'm not going to be right for everybody, and I know that. So yeah, so what can they expect? It's interesting. I had a client recently asked me this at one of our consultations, like, so, what can I expect, like, what will we go through? And I just said, you are the agenda. I don't have a fixed agenda. So what I have is I have a toolkit
Mhm.
of stuff, but you're the agenda. You're the client, you're driving the car, to use that analogy. You're setting the destination and understanding where we're going. I'm helping you, make sure we're really clear on that, and then I'm helping you navigate that way. And I will be bringing all sorts of different things from my toolkit and my experience to be able to help enable you to get there, and to get there quicker and faster, and in a way that you can enjoy that journey. But you are the agenda. I don't come with a fixed process. So I suppose, what can people expect? That it's about them.
I like that. I find what I have a couple of big sigh. I have a couple of big issues with leadership in general, and they are that businesses will often say their most important resource is people. They will often say that, but I think often actions don't necessarily deliver that. And I think the second thing is people often get promoted into leadership positions for being good at what they do. And that sounds obvious. Well, why wouldn't they? But okay, so an example I would have is if you're in a big firm and you have an amazing sales team, and you have someone that's wonderful at sort of selling and pitching and bringing business in, whatever, that person doesn't necessarily want a team of 20 people to lead, because he or she is out there bringing in work and is the sort of hunter gatherer, if you like. So I often think that as senior leaders, we bring people on board and put them in leadership positions without really, first of all, explaining to them the difference between managing and leadership. And then secondly, being in a place where we view their actions very negatively because they haven't had the leadership training. I just wondered if you could talk to how important coaching, guidance, training, education is of our leaders.
I think it's critical. I think it's absolutely critical. And one of my bugbears around leadership development and training is that there's an awful lot at the cognitive level. So if we could imagine a pyramid for a
Mm-hmm.
moment, there's a lot of training that would focus on, the strategies, the tasks, the cognitive side of stuff. But there's not a lot of training that focuses on the emotional resources and the metabolic resources that allow us then to show up as the leaders that we want to be. And, that for me is a piece that is massively missing, and that through my health coaching and further study and work that I've done since, I think is so important, because when we lead with how we make people feel, that's when we get the performance and the cultures that I think we're really aiming for as leaders of a business. And, there is a lot of misunderstanding around moods and emotions. And I think there's a lot of there can be leaders that are quite afraid to go there, that they are seen as maybe unhelpful in the workplace, whereas actually you can't distinguish. We are all people, and therefore we will have moods and we will have emotions, and things will get triggered, or they will be in a very positive place. People don't think included and engaged, they feel those things. So for me, the training has to start with better understanding our bodies and how our bodies work, so that and then our moods and emotions, so that we can show up as the leaders that we most want to be and have those behaviors.
That's
Behavior. Sorry, go on, Andrew.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's really important. I think what's perhaps happened in the past is that leaders expect their team to follow and adapt to their leadership style, as opposed to thinking, well, maybe it's me that needs to change my style and adapt to how people are feeling and how they're behaving and how they're acting. And I think we are getting more mindful that we need to bring in a menopause policy. We need to bring in a neurodiversity adaptation. We need to accommodate different people, different talents, different things, and accept that not everybody does things in the same way. Some people are happy sitting in an office 5 days a week, working away. Some people are happy working flexibly. Some people are happy working very different hours. So I think there's lots more that we should be able to adapt. And from a mercenary point of view, it's much more productive if people are happy and positive. All the research shows that people that are feeling positive and happy stay in the business longer, perform better. People that are unhappy and unhappy with their managers in particular tend to leave earlier, and which initiates recruitment fees and all those sort of things. So there's a very hard scientific evidence behind being more empathic and driving happiness, satisfaction, all of those things. It's not a soft, woolly sort of thing. It's a very, very hard, science-driven set of facts that are available.
I've done a lot of work in the last few years with Professor Chris Beattie. He is a professor of evolutionary anthropology and neuroscience at Oxford and Kent University. And he spent more than 20 years studying this relationship between mood, emotion, and high performance. Mm-hmm. And I love the rigor and the science that he brings to this. I think it makes it really accessible, particularly when we go and, we'll be working with, with senior leaders and their teams. And it just helps them to kind of get a tangible hold on, what's happening, what's driving things. There is so much, before we even get into capability, there is so much capacity that I think we leave on the table with our teams and, with the people that are working with us. And so, even if we were just able to tap into so much, there's so much capacity, there's so much potential there. That's without even getting into the capability side of things. But just, if we think about, and for those of you who are listening, I'm now using my hands, but, if we think about the demands on leaders, and, they can be really quite high, how well are we resourced? Are we resourced so that we can meet those demands, or is there a gap? And there's things that will happen to us throughout the day that might eat away at those resources to meet those demands. And we've got to look at how are we restoring ourselves or resolving if it's emotion that's, because in this gap, it becomes uncomfortable. That doesn't feel nice. And when that doesn't feel nice, we become disengaged from work. We'll have a higher negative bias. We'll think that, things are going off that maybe aren't going off. And you risk getting to the position that I was in, which is, burnout, health issues, addictions, and I say that, that could be from the wine at night to the coffee in the morning to, the social media escape, to more serious things as well. Yeah.
How do senior leaders in businesses respond when you talk about the importance of, and it sounds so simple, healthy body, healthy mind, that it's not just about changing what you think, is changing something else. I think I think we still often see them as very separate entities. So we go to the gym. Some people go to the gym. I don't go to the gym. Some people will. My son spends a lot of time at the gym and playing tennis, and your family the same, and it's all very healthy and stuff. And you don't necessarily then think, okay, well, what would I do for my mind? Or my daughter spends a lot of time doing lots of sort of mindful things and meditation and lots of sort of thinking about things and developing ideas and things. And the two don't necessarily seem to connect. So how do people respond when you sort of say, look, you're not going to get the best out of yourself unless you are positive mind, positive body?
I think that honestly, I think it can be really, really hard for people. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a senior leadership team a few weeks ago, and because they'd been learning about the relationship between their mood and their performance, and how the inputs that would serve better mood, better ability to deal with stress and their energy. So all the stuff that your grandma would say to you, have you eaten well? Have you slept well? Have you been out in nature? Have you spent any time in daylight today? Have you moved your body? And not necessarily in an intensive workout way, but, in a restorative way. We are, at the end of the day, we are creatures who are meant to be, designed to move, and yet our lifestyles today are so sedentary. And and have you spent time with people who you care about and who care about you? All of these things help restore your mood. And one of the things that this group was reflecting on that they found so hard and difficult was that they knew they'd buddied up, so they got a support network, so, and there was two buddies that were saying to us, do you know what, we knew we were getting stressed and work was getting to the point, and our resources were not there, and we knew we needed to go around the block, and we nearly didn't go for the get out the office and go for the walk around. And one of the buddies was like, come on, we were going to do half an hour, just do 10 minutes. Half an hour later, they were still walking around because they realized how much clearer their thinking was, how much better they were in terms of their problem solving, how much better they felt for getting out, getting fresh air, getting movement. And it was really interesting because then there's other people in the office that were like, oh, I saw you go and I was jealous that you were going. Well, that team now has set themselves like a walking target to walk around the globe, and they're like 75% of the way there or something like that. And so they're encouraging it, but it's about changing some of those behaviors, and it's about recognizing Sorry, Andrew. I was just going to say the last thing. It's about recognizing, I think, that it's not necessarily about work-life balance. We've talked for years about work-life balance. I think it's about more, particularly with the way our lifestyles are today, I think it's more helpful to think about work-life integration and how can we continually restore. So instead of just jumping onto a Zoom call or a Teams call actually, does it need to be a Zoom or a Teams call? Or could we take this on an old-fashioned telephone and go and have a walk around the garden, or, you know, a walk around the block while I'm having this meeting and this conversation? Of course, that's not going to be applicable in every situation, but I'm sure there are meetings that happen that could happen in a different way that would allow you to get some more of that restoration and top yourself up as you go through the day.
Definitely. And I've, yeah, for the last few years been a very anti the sort of phrase work-life balance, and I always think of it as, yeah, work-life harmony. I think work-life integration is a really good way of doing it, because it's balance always makes you think, well, it's got to be
Yes.
balanced. And again, you can't
Yeah.
see in the hands like a weighing scale, but it never happens that way. There's some times where work is super busy and you need to sort of really get on with things. Other times when you can sort of step back a little bit, finish early on a Friday, all those sort of things can happen. But we get into that sort of, and I used to get into that that falsehood that I needed to be busy. And I would, my EA would say, do you want me to get you some lunch? I haven't even got time to eat lunch. And I just keep working and working. And I think, the more I work, and exactly as you say, it doesn't, because there's no break in what you're doing, whether it's immediately on a Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever. And I could go into the office and be on 10 hours of Teams calls. Well, I could just be doing this sort of sat in the garden or somewhere. Really, I'm not interactive with anybody. I'm just sat in this little cubicle talking to people around the world on a Teams call. So you don't get any respite from one call to the next, and everything flows into one. And you sort of sit back and think, what I'm actually doing, is my work meetings? Is that what my work is going to meetings? And I think a lot of people, if they look at themselves, actually, yeah, it is. A lot of the work is meetings, which is such an oddity. I'm sure my grandparents would look at it and think, that isn't work. What do you mean you're in a meeting? That's not, no. And I agree that we don't often come out of those meetings with lots of actionable points and all those sort of things. And it's, yeah, I do think being able to be mindful and intentional about what we do is so important. And do you bring mindfulness and being present and being aware into the practice with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a
Okay.
really important piece. And so something that I found really helpful and useful is this idea that you can have certain things that maybe let's say no more than 10 things that you know that will help serve and restore your mood, your energy, your ability to deal with stress.
Mhm.
And if you have a little way of monitoring those each day, that can be really helpful. But the thing that I think started to really transform this for me was this idea of having like a base level of these things. So let's just take, for example, it could be sleep or drinking water, or like you say, the mindfulness. It could be intentional breathing. And so your base level for that would be, right, even on your worst day, when stuff is, when it really does hit the fan and it's, nightmare every day, is it possible for me to do 1 minute of intentional breathing? That would be my base level. And then have like an elite level, which would be, okay, on those days where this is more like a bubble wrap day, so I get to do the stuff that that really nourishes me, I could do 10 minutes of meditation. So it's this idea that we have a base level for these things and an elite level, and having those two, and keeping some sort of record or track of those in a diary or journal or what have you, I just find really helpful, because then even on those really poor days, if you are still hitting your base level, you're still doing, doing better. So nutritional protocol for me, so we will have our own nutritional protocol. And that's one thing I learned through all those different dietary theories that I learned about, is that we're all individual, and what serves one person is not necessarily going to serve another. And so for me, that one is, well, did I do my base level is 1 meal a day? That's my nutritional protocol. Can I make 1 meal a day that is, that I know that serves me well? And my elite level is all of my meals on that day. And that does a couple of things. I think the biggest thing that helps me with is, it helps me realize that So I think sometimes if we set ourselves, I want to meditate, I want to do my exercise, I want to do this, this. The reality is life's not like that. You can't, like, every day is not going to be what I would call a bubble wrap day where you can completely, look after yourself. The truth is most of us are out in the wild most of the time. And sometimes we're even paying the price, I would say. They would be like, kind of 3 categories of days. Don't know why that's rang. Apologies. Don't know why that's rang. Okay. Right. Will you be able to cut that?
Yeah, of course.
I'm so sorry. I don't know why that's coming through because my phone's on Do Not Disturb. It seems to have come through my computer.
Mine does that as well. I don't know how to stop it coming through the computer. It's very annoying.
I'm just going to message this person to say, please don't ring again, because I don't know why it's coming through on the computer. I've got a new computer, which is why I was a little bit like, is sound okay? Is everything else okay? So, and it seems to be WhatsApp. I'm just going to message him. Right, there we go. Yeah, there we go. So that's fine. So let's pick that. Let's just pick that up. What was I saying?
So you're talking about the, like I said, life gets in the way and we don't always achieve that elite thing, but actually having a base is so important.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so there's these, I would describe sort of 3 categories almost of days. So you've got those lovely bubble wrap days. I had one of those on Monday where I was at the spa for the day, and you get to do all of the things that you want to do that would really, nurture and look after yourselves. But the truth is, most of us are out in the wild most days, and life happens. And then occasionally we will be paying the price because we will be traveling with work, or there'll be that key deadline. There'll be something that means that we are sacrificing our sleep or our nutrition or our time with our loved ones because something needs to take priority for that amount of time. And so having this kind of base level and an elite level kind of allows this flexibility for you to be able to still stay on track and feel good about being on track with these things. But kind of with this flexibility for what life, throws at us.
I think that's really, really helpful and very practical and something that I am going to do. So when we speak again in the future, you can say, well, show me your record and I promise I'll have something to show. Because I think often I've done exactly that. I think, right, this week I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes every day. I'm going to walk 10,000 steps a day. I'm going to all these things. And when I get to, I might meditate for 10 minutes on Tuesday and not go out for a walk because it's terrible weather or something's happened or whatever. And I think, oh, well, that's it. I failed now. I'll stop. And the same with our eating habits. I think I'll eat healthier. Then I go out for dinner with a friend. I think, should I have dessert? I have dessert. The next day I think, well, there's no point carrying on. I failed. As opposed to thinking, well, that's okay. That's my base. And going to my breakfast and lunch were very healthy. Or I walked 15,000 steps yesterday. Or I meditated twice this week already. It's better than last week. I think having that ability to feel successful because I've achieved my base, which is a healthy base. And then for the days where I do score higher or I get to that elite level, I think, wow. And that should be a really even more positive feeling. So I really like that. It's not, because I think often people have a target or a goal or whatever, and no matter how close you get to it, well, I haven't achieved the goal, therefore I must have failed. As opposed to, no, you've got this sort of range to work with, and I think that's a really good idea. Is that something you do yourself?
I do, and I use a system called Notion, which some of your listeners may be familiar with. And in Notion, I have I have a list each day of those 10 things that I'm monitoring, and they're things like my time in bed, monitoring, am I getting 7.5 would be my base. 8.5 plus is kind of the elite level for me. So am I getting my sleep? Am I getting my hydration and my water in? Am I getting 30 minutes of intentional movement in each day? Those kinds of things. And there's some mindset things in there as well. The breathing is in there, which would encompass the meditation. I find that enormously useful. And the thing as you were chatting that I was reflecting on is this, is that when we do have a day where maybe we have been paying the price and things have been challenging, is to remember that every day is day one. And so we get the opportunity to wipe the slate clean and to make those decisions fresh again on a new day. In fact, it's not even a new day. It can be in any moment we get the
Yeah.
opportunity to make those decisions again. And so always just remembering, right, day one, this is my opportunity to vote for who I most want to become. And all of the decisions, the little decisions, the big decisions, and everything in between, they add up, don't they? So yeah,
They
we
do.
get that.
I remember talking to a friend in Germany at the end of the year, and as you often do, is are you going to make any New Year's resolutions? And he was, well, why? Why would I wait till New Year? I can make resolutions any day. I can make a new start any day. And I thought, exactly as you were saying, you don't have to sort of wait for this. Then we often do that thing, right? I'll stop smoking on Monday. I'll start my diet on Monday, rather than think, well, let's start now, or I'll go walking. When in May, I'll start in May, and rather than just sort of thinking, well, actually, every moment is a chance to try something new. I did want to ask about one thing in particular before I sort of forget, and I knew I'd get to this place. We hear a lot about transformation, which is a really, really big word.
Mhm.
And I often wonder, what do we mean when we say transformation? Are we trying to become the best version of ourselves, or are we going to try and change one particular part of our lives? What does transformation mean to you?
It's a really good question. And what does it mean to me? I suppose I can talk about how I feel I've transformed things
Hmm.
in my own life and what that's meant to me. Um, I I think in a way I have this belief that if we're not growing, we're dying or we're dead. It's one of my favorite sayings. Um, and so to be ever evolving, I think is something that is part of my soul's contract. And within that, there's a constant transformation in, or there's, what there is there's that ever evolving, there's that change,
Hmm.
that's happening. Um, and there's been some, I mean, I transformed my body and my health when when I studied and did that period of health coaching. I transformed my career and my business and my life when I moved from the corporate world into running my own business, which I've done now for the last 10 years. And it's always evolving, and that kind of never stops. But what do I think the transformation is? I think it's I think it's at that level where we get into our identity, around our belief systems, who we believe that we are. And when we change at that level, that changes then our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs and our actions, and that's when you change internally at that level. And there might be a lag time, but then your external world changes as well. I'm not sure. Does that make sense? And I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are on this subject.
No, it does. No, I was thinking as you were sort of saying that the transformation feels like one of the very few words that we have that is always about positive change. But whenever talk about, oh gosh, I've transformed to being much less happy, and I've transformed to being a much less healthy version of myself. We always think of transformation as being a very positive thing, and I like that, because there's not that many words that are all, even change. That person's changed. It can be a change for the worse or a change for the better. Whereas transformation, because that person's transformed, you never say it in a negative sense. So I do think it's really interesting, and I think what I sort of took from what you were saying, and that I really like, is that we can and we should. transform parts of our life, our self, our experience. And it's not always about trying to transform everything. We're not going from a chrysalis to a butterfly. This is you can transform in small parts. And I'm exactly the same as you. I think if we're not learning, I just love to learn new things, no matter what it is. It can be the smallest thing, it can be the biggest thing, it can be anything. But I think learning is just transforming parts of our brain, really. So I think transformation can be a small thing you should be very, very happy with. So I can transform how I incorporate breathwork into my week next week. That'll be a real transformation for me. Or it can be let's say, a complete career change, or a partner change, or relationship status, whatever. But I do like the idea that transformations build upon each other, that all of them, they're sort of incremental, and they sort of grow with one another. You don't transform in isolation. So whatever you're transforming is helping to build something else within you. So I think it's a really, I hadn't really thought about it in so much depth, but I think transformation is a really powerful word. It's a really powerful invocation as something that you want to do for the better. I really like it as a word now.
I think you're right. And I think one of the things through my study and practice of neuro-linguistic programming is one of the things that we would always want to check is just to check for the ecology of the transformation, of the change with clients as well. So just making sure that in all contexts of your life, this is something that is going to, support what you want in all contexts. This is just coming to my mind as well, which is thinking around just how important our values are, and thinking about, well, how clear are we on our values and what's most important. I mean, a value is just a generalization of an experience that's important to us. And the truth is that, the criteria that enables us to meet those values will be different for each and every one of us. But what's interesting is that whenever I'm working with either a team or an individual, very often, although they may have done some sort of values elicitation exercise in the past, people don't necessarily review those regularly. And I would recommend reviewing those, maybe every 3 to 6 months at least, because life changes and our values and what are most important to us will change, and just kind of checking in with those. Because I think when that transformation and that change is aligned to your values, and what you value most in the world, that really creates that magnetic pull, and it just ensures that you're in alignment with who you most want to become. And back to what we were saying before about transformation and being ever evolving, I think it's this let's never stop becoming, and let's think about, well, actually, for me to experience more connection, more joy, more peace, more love in my life, then what's the qualities, the criteria, and who do I need to become? And that's changing in terms of the identity level that I was talking about before. And when you can align in that way, it's like taking the handbrake off. And I think I think one of the things that I enjoy so much is that often when I meet people for the first time, life is busy, it is stressful, it can feel overwhelming, some are close to burnout. And it's this fact that actually so much is within our control. But it's giving people the tools and the education and the understanding, and then the support that when the rubber hits the road, they can implement those things practically to really, really allow that transformation to then take place. But it's all within.
So do you think that our beliefs are constant, and it's our values that adapt?
No, I think so. Our beliefs are just a thought with a feeling of certainty attached to them. So, like any other thought,
Mm.
albeit our beliefs will have a strong feeling of
Mhm.
certainty attached to them, but like any other thought, they can change. It's like if you've ever, if you think, what? So, an example might be, I don't know, you believe that you've got, that a particular person was of real. Um, Steadfast character, and then somebody says to you one day that this person's done something, you can't believe it. You're like, well, no, surely not, because my belief about this person is, and they say it with such with such passion and such
Mm.
that you're like, oh, hang on a minute, and you start to question that belief, and it starts to shake. I mean, very quick story. So I used to have a belief that I couldn't have a dog because I worked full time, and that would be unfair. I lived on my own at the time, and I worked full time, and that wouldn't be fair to that dog. And that was my belief. And then I had a great manager that said to me, and this was back in my Mars days, that said to me, "Who else do you know that works full time and has a dog?" And I was like, "Oh, hang on a minute." My boss does, and a few months later, for those of you who are watching, this this was the scruffy mutt that I rescued from the Dogs Trust,
Wow.
and he was just the biggest blessing in my life. Just absolutely one of the best decisions that I ever made, and I wouldn't have made that if somebody hadn't questioned my belief. And so what I would say is, if you identify that you've got maybe a limiting belief, question it. A little bit like a tabletop, the belief gets these legs underneath it, and as soon as you start to sort of like chop a leg off, or you question it, that the tabletop becomes unsteady. So you can question your beliefs, and you can transform them into something far more empowering.
Mm. It's
And our
interesting. Go on, sorry.
no, apologies. You pausing, and then but our values will change as well. And so my values today as a mother are probably a little bit different and than what they were pre my family and my children arriving in the world.
It was interesting you say that. I was going to ask. It might feel a bit random, but I'd be really interested in your view on it. So I think your children are a little bit younger than mine, so hopefully you've not had these issues yet. But so when I was growing up, hundreds of years ago, there weren't smartphones, and there wasn't even the internet, for goodness sake, when I was at school. So we had to go to the library and borrow a book, which my children find extraordinary that I couldn't Google everything or go in AI to find things out now. But I think so on one hand, we have this amazing ability to access more information than ever before. We can find out the answer to most questions in a sort of millisecond. We can research something and find out if it's true or not, and all these things, which is absolutely amazing. But then we have social media in particular, where lots of people end up, because of our confirmation bias, we end up going into sort of echo chambers of people that think like us, and we hear something and think, no, that's right, and we change this and we change that, and there's just so much information coming at us. And I think one of the challenges we have is a bit like the leadership thing before, where people need to be guided, trained, nurtured to being good leaders. We sort of have social media, this sort of fire hose of information that pours at us, and we've never really stepped back and thought, how do I adapt to that? Or how do I utilize that in a positive way? And I wonder what impact you felt or thought being online constantly, social media constantly. What impact do you think that has on the people that we are?
Mm. Well. Firstly, I too remember, and I didn't grow up with the internet. In fact, I was at university and still using a payphone. So I don't think you're that ancient. Yeah, and so you're right. It's that gift in the access to the resources and the information that we have. How I deal with it myself is that I am very protective of my focus. So, as a very practical example, I have all notifications on every type of social media turned off. So I never get the little red dot, that tells me how many messages I've got. That sits not on the first page of my home screen, it sits on the second page of my home screen on my phone. So even if I'm glancing at my phone, there's no pop-ups, there's no banners, there's no notifications. And what that means is that whenever I go into social media, then I'm going in because I'm making a conscious effort to do that. Another thing that I do is I have a widget on my phone that monitors my screen time. I'm really protective of time around the children and being aware that, and in fact, one of my 10 things that I track each day is the baseline is 5 minutes phone free, uninterrupted time with my family. The elite level, which I'm pleased to say I hit most days, is 30 to 60 minutes. Absolutely no screen time or phones around the family. And I just think there I don't have new I don't choose I if something big's going on news wise, then absolutely my husband's normally the one to let me know, but again I don't go and seek out the news unless there is something that I think I need to be aware of this. So I'm very protective. I think it's a bit like I think nowadays we need to be a bit like bouncers on the door of our minds. I'm very protective of what we are letting in. So I love doing what you're doing here with the show, listening to podcasts or audio books while I'm doing, other things around the house, opposed to it would be so easy just to have the news on in the morning, but I won't go there. Because I know that it will impact my focus, and it maybe get me focusing on things that I can't directly control, and I'd rather have my focus on the things that I can control and the difference that I can make. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. And I've never known something to be such a time vampire, really, if that's a phrase. As a fan, so I put TikTok onto my phone just to see what it was like, and people sort of talked about it TikTok, and it takes me time. You do this, and that can't be right. And I put it on my phone, and I lasted a week on my phone, and I don't think there was and this is not me trying to go on it at all. There wasn't a day during the week where I hadn't been on it for less than 2 hours, and I think it just so addictive, and it's generally absolute nonsense, and there's nothing of any value. And I'm sure people that are avid TikTokers, they're probably rolling their eyes at that. This old guy saying this, but there are some occasional things in there. But it's just so easy. They have that amazing thing about just that constant scrolling, and there's always something new. It's not you can watch television or you can read a book or whatever, but on TikTok or I don't know, Instagram or whatever other thing people have, there's always something new, and it's like, oh, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I had to delete it, so I deleted it off my phone. And similar to you, so I'm not a sort of a strong Catholic or anything, but during Lent, I said, right, I'm going to be on my phone. I'm going to monitor it. I'm not going to be on my phone for more than 45 minutes a day. And apart from podcasts and things which don't sort of count as screen time, if you're not actually using the screen. And after the first few days, I didn't find it that onerous, really. But it is incredibly easy to spend time on the phone that you just don't realize you're spending. I think if it's intentional, if I think, right, I've got half an hour, I'm going to flick through, I don't know, Facebook, Instagram, see what people are up to, and I've got half an hour while I'm doing something else. I'm waiting in with the doctors. Fine, I'll do that. I've got half an hour wait, I'll do that. No, absolutely fine. It's when I sort of sit down and, well, when I was on TikTok, I'm kind of, oh God, the children will be home soon. Right, I haven't done, I haven't even emptied the dishwasher yet. And it is that, they're very, very clever. It's interesting that most tech CEOs say they wouldn't let their children have their phones before 16. Interestingly, when children are sort of 13 and 14 and 15 are spoken to, research shows that most of them wouldn't let their children, if they ever have them, have their phone before they're 16, 17. So we've tried to take it away from them. It's too late now. But yeah, so I think even people that are using it now are aware that it's yeah, suddenly takes all this time away. Just one short story. So a friend of mine, they had a thing. A 17, 18-year-old sort of intern came to the office and started working, and just seemed to spend all of their time on their phone with the earphones plugged in, and yeah, couldn't get them to sort of interact with the office, or whatever. So my daughter's view was, well, she probably felt quite shy, and then people weren't talking to her. She went on her phone more and more, and that led to, whereas my wife's sort of view as well, she's on her phone, therefore people can't interact with her. It's very negative, and it's interesting. People coming into the workplace now, yeah, have never known life without a smartphone by their fingertips. It's never been. I think on average, they're no more than a meter away from my body at any time. It's an amazing device, but it's something to be aware of how much of our time and thought it can take.
Absolutely. I attended a webinar on Monday night with a good friend of mine who has a charity called Positive Social, and
Mhm.
I attended it because I wanted to learn more about actually how how I could manage things with my boys. You're right, they're younger, so they are currently 6 and 9, which means that they don't have smartphones or access to any social media at the moment, but I'm aware that it will come. And there was a few things that that Mark shared that I thought were really useful.
Mm.
Um, and one is that there are apps that will that you can download on your phone. I don't know if you're aware of these, that will, before you open up a WhatsApp or whichever app it is, it will get you to just do breathing for it, like, and it'll just do a pretty thing on the screen, and it'll just get you to, and just to really get you just to pause. It won't open it straight away. It won't allow you to open it. It'll give you 30 seconds for you to
Mm.
go, do I really want to go into this? And he's got his screen time down most often now to about 20 minutes a day. And I think that there's this, for me, there is this, and he showed us a video, and it was of a father and son, like a toddler, and without phone and with phone. So the same thing happening, the toddler coming in the room with the dad on the phone. And it kind of breaks your heart when you realize. I remember breastfeeding my children, and somebody saying to me, for the first time in human evolution, there is something coming between a mother and her breastfeeding baby, and a babies that she's breastfeeding, and it's the phone. And it's I again, so I think it's about it. There is so much good in all this connectivity that we have and the information that we have, and it's not to, I think, blow that out of proportion, or the baby out with the bathwater. But I think it is about how we can use that very intentionally, and how we can ensure that we are still doing the things that we as human beings have evolved to do. Get outside, get in the daylight, sit around campfires. Like, I'm making
Mm.
it romantic now, but
No,
just to do it, like just doing that stuff that, or that, we're meant to, we are meant to be in nature. How many
mm.
are, getting out, and particularly now we're in springtime, getting that the feeling of the grass on your feet, and getting out.
It's yeah, and again, all the research shows that that has as much benefit as lots of medication we take and lots of things. And I was a bit like you, so we got I got my first ever dog, who's wandering around here now, just about 4 years ago. So just 4 years, 5 years in October. So just during lockdown, and didn't have one as children because my sister was allergic to fur and stuff. But we got a little dog now. She's amazing. So when we go out for a walk, and we have one just before this call, so I have a podcast going, but I never use my phone when I'm walking, if that makes sense. So, and I talk to the dog quite a lot. People think I'm mad, but I'm chatting away to her, and we're talking away, whatever. But then I'll walk past somebody or see somebody, and this is not understand judgmental, but I'll see somebody pushing a pushchair that's on their smartphone, and the child in the pushchair has a tablet or something. I think that's two barriers between you. You're on the phone, the child's on a tablet. There's two barriers between you. Just actually, yeah, just having that conversation. And I think there's nothing more valuable for a child than its parents' voice. And I think that just yeah, it'd be really interesting in sort of a next generation's time how this all comes out, because we've got it quite hard in a way because we didn't grow up with this, and now we're trying to manage it with our children. Whereas our children grew up with it, they will manage something else with their own children, I'm sure. But it's interesting, yeah, how whether we talk less now we've got our phones. I think we do. I think certain offices are a lot quieter. The telephone doesn't ring. People are generally texting or messaging, or it's ring. They'll text somebody to say, "Is it okay if I call you?" Whereas when I was growing up, you just picked up the phone. If they weren't there, they weren't there. That was simple as that, really. But
Yeah.
it's almost seen as being intrusive now if you call somebody without, pre warning them, really. So I've taken a huge amount of your time. I have got a few more questions, if that's okay. Are you
Oh,
okay
of
for
course.
time?
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I'd love
So,
to. Love to.
how do you I am sure there are moments when things aren't as sunny and wonderful. How do you keep so inspired and positive and keep evolving on your journey?
And yes, there have been moments where things have not been so great. So, for example, during COVID, I lost probably 95% of my business overnight. And it took me about 18 months to rebuild. And it's been rebuilt, and it's a much stronger, better business now than it ever was. And I'm grateful for that experience. But in the moment when you're going through that, it is really hard. And keeping that trust and that belief in yourself and what you're doing, particularly over a prolonged period of time when you feel doing all the right things, and you're not necessarily getting the results or seeing that come to fruition, can be really, really hard. And what kept me going throughout that time, I would say that it's the people around you. I don't think any of us do this journey on our own. And so that connection with, first of all, my husband, who has got unshakable belief in me, I think sometimes more than I have in myself. And so that support from him throughout that time was critical. But I also continued to invest in myself and my own development with coaches and mentors and people around me that could sense check, was I doing the right things, and that on those days where it feels really dark, that could give you that supportive encouragement. So I think having that network is really, really important. And just and then it comes back to the little things, and I think the little things sometimes can be everything. And it's back to those, it's back to the things we were talking about, like my list of 10. Have I practiced some gratitude today? And what can I be grateful for? We have this, I think sometimes it feels like this struggle between, we know that we feel grateful for all that we have in the moment, but at the same time we're simultaneously wrestling with this fact that we're not where we really want to be. And and again, that's just about focus. So spending some focus and time in that place where it's like, actually everything is like, I'm safe, this is good, gratitude for that. And then switching the focus. Okay, so where do I want things to be? What actions can I take, and what can I do to proactively move myself towards where I want to go? And I think that's helpful. But ultimately, just keeping the faith. That's what I'm going to say. Keeping the faith and the trust that you are on the right path, and that I come back to here, and so much of I think the journey, particularly since corporate life, has been about connecting to my heart and being really clear about what's my heart telling me. And I think so often we think with our minds and our heads, but actually if we can get into our heart space, our heart knows all the answers anyway.
I like that. I think one of the things that people don't often acknowledge or accept is it's really important to, and this might sound a bit silly, but it's really important to be able to love yourself. And I think, and sometimes I remember my grandma might say, "Oh, she loves herself," in a very sort of negative way. But I think if you really do allow yourself the opportunity for sort of self-love and self-compassion, all those things, it's so important, because I think that's, first of all, it's a very attractive quality. If somebody is loves themselves and is very positive and is very compassionate to themselves, it's a very attractive human trait. But I do think, often we'll look, there's externalities, or we'll look to what our head says. And it's super interesting that you literally said that almost the same thing. We're listening to our hearts. I think is something we don't do enough, and allow ourselves, give ourselves permission to love ourselves and to be in balance and feel harmony, all of those things. I think that's really, it's a very interesting answer you gave. But no, I like it. Yeah, it was good.
Well, what's interesting as well is coming back to the social media side of things as well. And this is something that I work, I a lot sometimes with some of my clients, and that is that we can be very externally referenced. So
Yeah.
my worth and my value, is that based on what people are telling me about myself, or actually is it based on kind of my own, my center, my being, like, and I really encourage this with my children. I've been very aware of this more recently. So they come in, they should bring me a picture that they've drawn at school or something they've made in art class, and instead of me going, "Oh, that's wonderful," and giving them all this external validation, I'll go, "How do you," so that, I'll say, "Oh, you had a great time. How do you feel? How do you feel about your drawing?" "I feel good about my drawing." Because I think there's a lot of this, and I think it's important that we have both, that we can, we need both. We need to be able to reference ourselves versus, sort of versus others, and have that maybe external validation. But I think on the whole, what I see a lot with my clients is a bit too much of that, and coming back to our own heart space and kind of going, right, well, actually, am I showing up? Am I living in alignment with my values? And am I coming from a wholehearted place? Can I sleep tonight knowing that I brought my best self to today, to the interactions that I've had? And I think there's, it's a bit like a pendulum, and we want to kind of be in that space where you can have both, but there's not too much swaying either way.
Yeah, that's far more validation than getting, I don't know, 100 likes on a picture or a post or whatever, or worrying because you only got 100 likes and you should have got 200 likes or whatever, because that's so meaningless in the scheme of things. But I think, yeah, exactly, you should say, has today been a good day, and then being able to sleep and feel positive. So, are you the sort of person that looks very far forward? Do you have a vision for what the future holds for you?
So I typically will think about oh gosh, this insight into my head now. So I will typically think, yes, as far out as maybe 10 years. So 10, 5, 3, a year, and the next 100 days as well. So I kind of, I guess I think in different blocks, and of course the further out it goes, the more hazy it is, and it's less it's less well formed. But for me, the next 10 years, we were saying before we got on the call about my son being 9 and realizing I've only got the same amount of time
Yeah.
again with him, if I'm lucky, that that before he's a fully grown man. So the next 10 years for me is about, how do I really integrate and show up powerfully as, as a wife, as a mother, in my work. And funnily enough, you talked about authenticity right at the top of the call, and that's my word for this year as well. So how do I do that, and how do I role model those things well, for my children? Certainly part of what's important to me over the next 10 years, 10-year horizon.
I think my final question, I think you sort of answered it throughout the entire podcast, really, but what does success mean and feel like for you?
success would be to be ever evolving, true to my spirit, enjoying the journey along the way, and trusting that in doing that, there are infinite miracles available for myself, for others. And I think to live a life of service, because when we are contributing to others, for me, that is the bullseye. It brings deeper meaning, growth, love, connection, certainty, and also variety. And it hits all those things for me, the things that, again, we're talking about values, aren't we, and the things that are most important and our needs as human beings. So and I'll just say this, which is, so sometimes I say this without wishing to sound arrogant in any way, shape, or form, but sometimes I'm fortunate enough to already feel like the most successful person that I know, because I have that freedom to live my life on my terms.
That's a wonderful answer. Thank you for that, and for the all the time I spent together. It was really interesting. You're a very warm person, and I mean that in the most positive way, in terms of your demeanor and the words you use. And yeah, it feels very positive. I can understand why people like working with you. Yeah, no, keep doing what you're doing, for sure.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on the show. Your questions have been fabulous, and I've loved talking to you and getting to know you as well. Thank you.